Hello everyone, myself Deepthi, a faculty of Silver Hills Public School, Calicut from Social Science Department. Today we will discuss about Democratic Politics Class 10 CBSE. As you all know, these are the chapters: Power Sharing, Federalism, Political Parties, Outcomes of Democracy are the main chapters for your final exam. Today we will discuss about first chapter, Power Sharing. What is power sharing? Power sharing is a division or distribution of power between the different levels of the government and different organs of the government. And what do you mean by different levels of government? Different levels of government means central government, state government and the local self-governments. When our constitution our constitution declares that India follows two-tier democracy, that is union government, commonly known as central government and state government. But our constitution recognizes about the importance of the local self-governments, and that is known as third-tier democracy. A vast country like India cannot run only with the two-tier democracy. So we established the three-tier democracy, that is local self-government in the rural areas, urban areas and the district level. In rural areas it is commonly known as Panchayati Raj system, in urban areas municipalities and municipal corporations, and in the district level it is known as the Jilla Parishad. Now let us discuss about the Belgium. Belgium is a small country in Europe. It shares the borders with France, Germany, Netherlands and Luxembourg. The population is 1 crore. The ethnic composition of the country is very complex. Why? Because the 59% of the people lives in the Flemish region and they speak the Dutch language. Another 40% lives in the Wallonia region and they speak the French language. Only 1% of Bulgarians speaks the German language. That is about the total majority of the country. But in the capital city, the capital is Brussels, but in the capital city, 80% of the people speaks the French language. The minority, actually in the whole country, the minority people were the French speaking people. But what about the capital city? In the capital city, the majority people were the French speaking people. So there was a clash between the French speaking people and Dutch speaking people. Okay, so the discrimination between the French speaking people and Dutch speaking people, the less privileges for this Dutch speaking people and greater privileges for the French speaking people. That was the problem in Belgium. So how the government accommodate all these regional diversities? The constitution prescribes that the numbers of Dutch speaking people and French speaking ministries shall be equal in the central government. First point. Second point, many powers of the central government given to state government of 2 regions. Third point, Brussels had a separate government in which the community have equal representation. Then apart from the central government and state government, one more government is there, that is known as community government. This community government is elected by the people belonging to one language community. So these are the steps taken by the Belgium government to accommodate all these regional diversities. You can expect one question from this chapter, that is how the Belgium government accommodate the regional diversities. 4 points. Under this question it has 4 points. Then what is a community government? This government has major power regarding cultural, educational and language related issues. Now let us discuss about another country, that is Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was also a colonial country of Britain and it became independent in 1948. Soon after the independence, they started the majoritarianism government, majority rule. Sri Lanka is an island nation, just a few kilometers away from our southern coast of Tamil Nadu. The total population is over 2 crore. And this in Sri Lanka, the leaders of the Sinhala community sought to secure dominance over the government by virtue of their majority. That means majority in form of government. There were two sections of people, Sinhala speakers and Tamil speakers. Among the Tamilians, there were two groups. There were Sri Lankan Tamilians and the Indian Tamilians. The Tamil natives of the country were known as Sri Lankan Tamilians, and the people who migrated to Sri Lanka from India during the colonialism were known as the Indian Tamilians. Actually, the Tamilians occupied the eastern and the central part of Sri Lanka, and majority of them were Hindus, Muslims and Christianity. But the Sinhala speakers, in 1956, an act passed to organize Sinhala as the only official language and thus regarding Tamil, and they declared Buddhism as the official religion and Sinhala as the official language. It created a tension between the Tamil speakers and the Sinhala speakers. The Sri Lankan Tamilians launched the political associations, political organizations, and their demand was to recognize Tamil as an official language, regional autonomy and no discrimination on the basis of education, employment, etc. They demanded equal opportunities. In 1980, the Tamilians, they demanded separate ALM. ALM means state for them, but it was denied by the government, majoritarian government of Sri Lanka. Thus, it resulted the civil war, a civil war between the Sinhala speakers and the Tamil speaking people. After the civil war, it has caused a terrible setback to the social, cultural and economic life of the country. Our next topic from this chapter is, why is power sharing desirable? Actually, there are two reasons. That is, one is prudential and the second one is moral. What do you mean by prudential? Prudential is the better outcomes of democracy. Actually, the power sharing reduces the social conflicts between the different groups. Actually, always social conflicts may lead to violence and political instability. By sharing the powers between the social groups, it may reduces the conflicts between the social groups and political stability. The second reason, the deeper reason why power sharing is good for democracy, power sharing is very spirit of democracy. A democratic rule involves sharing power with those affected by its exercise and who have to live with its effects. That is moral reason. That is value based life. So, two types of power sharing, that is prudential, one is prudential and second one is moral reasons. Next topic is, what are the power sharing arrangements in our country? So, as we discussed, power sharing is a division or distribution of power between the different levels of government and different organs of the government. So, in India, as a federal country, in India, the power is divided between the different organs of the government, can be termed as horizontal distribution of power. The first one is horizontal distribution of power, that is, power is shared among the different organs of the government. Which are the different organs of the government? Legislature, executive and judiciary. That is known as horizontal distribution of power. It also known as check and balance system. What do you mean by check and balance system? Each organ has the power to correct or to overview the functions of the other organs. In that way, it is known as check and balance system. The second one is, power can be shared among the different levels of the government. Which all are the different levels of the government? Union government, commonly known as central government, state government and local self-governments. This type of power distribution is known as vertical distribution of power. It also known as federal division of power, as we are following federal division of power in India. Third one, power may also be shared among different social groups such as religious and linguistic groups. We have already discussed about the community government in Belgium. See, it gives importance for the minorities. Fourth one, power sharing arrangements can be seen in the way political parties, pressure groups and interest groups. So, what is a pressure group of an interest group? These are the link, these political parties, pressure groups and the interest groups are the link between the people and the government, or the government and the governed. And it helps us to people power sharing or participations in the government. So, these are the 4 ways how the power is shared. The first one is horizontal distribution of power, second one is vertical distribution of power, and the third one is power is divided among the different social groups, and the fourth one is power is divided among the political parties and interest group and pressure groups. So, our next chapter is federalism. Here we will discuss about federalism, unitary system, features of federalism, categories of federalism, what makes India a federal country, residuary subjects, how is federalism practiced, decentralization in India. What is federalism? Federalism is a system of government in which the power is shared between the central authority and various constituent units of a country. Usually, federalism has 2 more levels of government. The power is being divided between the central authority and which is related to few subjects of the common national interest. And the other level of government is at the various constituent units in the state level and which look after the day-to-day administration of the state. Both central government and state government are not dependent with each other, they are independent. Now, what is unitary form of government? In this sense, federation has contrasted with the unitary form of government. Under the unitary form of government, there is only one level of government and all the subunits are subordinate to the central government. And what is next topic? What is the differentiate between the unitary system and federal system? We have already discussed about what is federalism and what is unitary form of government. A federalism is a system of government in which the power is shared between the central government and state government, and these are not dependent with each other, all these are independent factors. But in a unitary system, the central government is responsible. No, the central government divides the power to state governments and the state government is answerable to the central government. That means central government can pass orders to the state government and state government is answerable to the central government. But here the central government cannot pass orders to the state government and state government is not answerable to the central government. But in a democratic country like India, both central government and the state government are responsible and answerable to the people. Next topic, what are the key features of federalism? Let us discuss about the key features of federalism. Federalism, there are 2 or more levels of government. We discussed the levels of government. First one is union government, commonly known as central government, state government and local self-governments. Now, different tiers of government govern the same citizens, but each tier has its own jurisdiction in specific matters of legislation, taxation and administration. And these jurisdiction, third point, these jurisdictions are constitutionally guaranteed, that are clearly specified in our constitution. Then the fifth one, the judiciary plays a very important role. The court has the power to interrupt the constitution and the powers of the different levels of government. Sixth one, the sources of revenue for each levels of government are clearly specified in our constitution. Seventh one, and the federal system has dual objectives. What are the dual objectives? To safeguard and promote the unity of our country, at the same time accommodate the regional diversities. We can add one more points to this features of federalism, that is, what are the both aspects of this federalism. The both aspects of federalism can be termed as a mutual trust and agreement to live together in a vast country like India, and it also known as unity in diversity. Our next topic is categorization of federalism. The division of power between the central government and state government are clearly specified in our constitution, and it varies from one federation to another. Actually, based on the historical context which the federation was formed, there are two types of federalism, that is, coming together federalism and holding together federalism. Coming together federalism, it includes USA, Switzerland. Then the second route, that has a large country decides divide its power between the constituent states and the national government. This kind of holding together federation is followed in India, Spain and Belgian countries. Actually, what is the difference between the coming together federation and holding together federation? In coming together federation, the various constituent states are equal, having the equal power, but in the holding together federation, the central government tends to be more powerful. Next topic is what makes India a federal country. We got independence in 1947. Soon after the independence, many princely states became a part of our country, and our constitution declares India as a union of states, and we followed two-tier democracy, that is, central government and state government. Later, our constitution recognizes about the importance of this local self-government or third-tier democracy. India follows federalism through three-tier democracy. The first point you can add like that, by three-tier democracy, India follows the federalism. Second one, our constitution follows threefold legislation. And what do you mean by this threefold legislation? This threefold legislation is three lists: union list, state list and concurrent list. So what do you mean by the union list? Union list, it includes subjects of national importance such as defense of the country, foreign affairs, banking, communication and currency. The union government alone can make the laws relating to the subjects mentioned in this list. So, union government is responsible for the union list. The second one is state list. It contains subjects of state and local importance such as police, trade, commerce, agriculture, irrigation. The state government alone can make laws relating to the subjects mentioned in this list. Actually, state is an important power here. And the third list is known as concurrent list. It includes subjects of common interest to both the union government as well as the state governments. This list includes education, forest, trade unions, marriage, adoption, successions. So, both governments are responsible for this concurrent list. That is known as threefold legislation. Next one is residuary subjects. The third point is how India becomes a federal country. The third point is residuary subject. Residuary subjects also known as reserved power. And these subjects are not enlisted in our these three lists. When our constitution framed, these subjects are not there. So, according to our constitution, the law making was given to the union government. Example, computer software, e-networking, e-commerce, etc. These are the subjects which are not there, not that time when our constitution was framed. So, what makes India a federal country? If a question like that, you can write the answers. First point, the three-tier democracy. India follows three-tier democracy. Second one, threefold legislation and residuary subject. Third point is residuary subject, and you can also add the functions of parliament. Parliament cannot make any changes in the provisions of our constitution. It has to be approved by the both houses of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. At least 1/3 majority. Then judiciary. Judiciary plays a very important role. Formulation of laws, maintenance of peace and security, and even court act as an umpire to settle the disputes between the states and local self-governments. Our next topic is, how is federalism practiced? India is a democratic country. The real success of federalism can be attributed with the Indian democratic politics. As you all know, the success of federalism in India depends upon three aspects. The first one is the spirit of federalism, and the second one is the respect for the diversity, and the third one is desire to live together. When our constitution framed, so many problems faced by our constitution. The first and major aspect of our test for our Indian Confederation was language policy, linguistic states, and center-state relations. What is linguistic states? Linguistic states was the first and major test for our Indian Federation. From 1947 to 2017, many old states vanished and new states have been formed. The territories, the areas, the boundaries, the names have been changed. Many states formed on the basis of languages were known as linguistic states. Another states also formed on the basis of culture, ethnicity and geography. Those states were known as Nagaland, Jharkhand and Uttarakhand. When the problem was arose, or when the demand was arose on the basis of linguistic states or language, our national leaders feared that it would lead to another type of disintegration of our country. So they resisted the linguistic states for some time. But actually, this linguistic states promoted the national unity among people, the spirit of nationalism, accommodation of regional diversities, and the smooth functioning of our administration. The second test for our Indian Federation was language policy. Our Indian Constitution did not recognize any national language as one language. Hindi was identified as the official language, but Hindi is only mother tongue of only 40% of Indian population. Our Constitution recognizes other 21 languages as the scheduled language. States have their own official language. From 1965, our Constitution asked to stop the use of English as an official language, but the other non-Hindi speaking states, they demanded the use of English language as the official language has to be continued. And promotion of Hindi became the official purpose of this Indian government. The third problem to our federation was center-state relations. Restructuring the center-state relation was the third test for our Indian Federation. India is a democratic country with multi-party system. We have 7 national political parties and many regional political parties. From 1990, many regional political parties arose in different parts of our country. Actually, this era was known as era of coalition. Since no party gains a full majority in Lok Sabha election at the center, it can be allied with the other political parties to form the government. That is known as coalition government. After the 1990, coalition government was very common, and this led to the new culture for the center-state relations. So, if a question arose like that, how is the federalism practiced in India? You can explain with language policy, linguistic states and center-state relations. Our next topic is decentralization in India. What do you mean by decentralization? Federalism is a system of government in which the power is shared between the central government and state government. When the power is taken away from the central government and state government and given to local self-government, it is known as decentralization. The idea behind the decentralization is to solve or to settle the conflicts at the local level, because the people knows about their locality. They know how to make the improvement in this locality and what are the development programs. When our constitution framed, India was following two-tier democracy, that is central government and state government. But a vast country like India cannot run smoothly with these two tiers. So our constitution recognizes about the three-tier democracy, that is local self-government. And actually this local self-government is the best example. The local self-government is the best example for the democratic practices through direct participation. In the early times, you know, direct democracy and indirect democracy. Okay, and major step taken towards the decentralization in 1992. The constitution amended so many times to make this three-tier democracy or local self-government more powerful and effective. Now, let us discuss about what are the features of this three-tier democracy or local self-governments. It is constitutionally mandatory to hold regular election to local government bodies. Second point, seats are reserved in the elected bodies and the executive heads of these institutions for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and other backward classes. At least 1/3 of all positions are reserved for women. Fourth one, the State Election Commission has been created in each state to conduct panchayat and municipal elections. Fifth point, the state governments are required to share some powers and revenue with local self-government bodies. If there is a question arose like that, what are the characteristics of the three-tier democracy? What is the answer? The first one is, it is mandatory that regular elections to local government bodies. First point. Second point, reservation for SC, ST and OBC. Third point, reservation for women candidates, 1/3 position for women candidates. Fourth point, the State Election Commission in each states, independent State Election Commission in each states to conduct the elections in local self-governments. Fifth point, the financial support to local governments by the state government. Now, let us discuss about the local self-government in rural areas, urban areas and the district level. In the rural areas, it is known as Panchayati Raj system. Each village of group. Now, let us discuss about the local self-government in rural areas. The local self-government in rural areas, it is known as Panchayati Raj system. Each village or group of village in some states has a Gram Panchayat. And Gram Panchayat, it's a council consisting of ward members, Panch and Sarpanch, the president. They are directly elected by all the adult population living in that ward. Panchayats works under the functions of Grama Sabha. or Grama Sabha makes the supervisions of this Gram Panchayat. It has to meet twice or thrice to approve the annual budget and to review the functions of this Grama Sabha or Grama Panchayat. Next topic is about the local self-government at the district level. The local self-government, a few Gram Panchayat together known as Panchayat Samiti, block or mandal. The members of the district level members elected from the ward itself. That means those people are elected from the ward itself. This is together known as Jilla Parishad. Panchayat Samiti, block or mandal together known as Jilla Parishad. The members of Lok Sabha and the members of state legislative assembly are also in the district level. The Jilla Parishad chairperson is the political head of the Jilla Parishad. The next topic is the local self-government in urban areas. As Gram Panchayat is for rural areas, similarly we have municipalities for urban areas. Big cities are constituted into municipal corporations. Both municipalities and municipal corporations are controlled by elected bodies consisting of people's representatives. The municipal chairperson is the political head of the municipalities. In municipal corporation, this officer is known as mayor. Now, let us discuss about the political parties, chapter 6. What is a political party? A political party is a group of people who come together to contest elections and holding power in the government. And it put forward policies and programs for the society with a view of promoting the collective good. What are the components of a political party? The leaders, the active members and the followers. Now, let us discuss about the functions of the political party. Parties contest elections. We all know in India as a democratic country we are following multi-party system and these political parties are contesting elections. Second point, parties put forward different policies and programs for the welfare of our country. The parties are forwarding many policies and programs. Third point, parties play a decisive role in making laws for a country, law making body of a country. Then parties form and run the government. Those parties that lose in the election plays a role of opposition parties. Sixth one, parties shapes the public opinion. And the seventh one, parties provides access to the government machinery and welfare scheme implemented by the governments. So, maybe a question, what are the functions of political parties? Number 1, contesting elections. Number 2, put forward policies and programs for the welfare of our country. Third one, making laws for our country. Fourth one, forms and runs the government. Next one, the role of opposition, then it shapes the public opinion and implementing welfare schemes. These are the important functions or key features of our political parties. Next one, how many parties should we have? Actually in India we are following multi-party system. Some countries like one-party system, also known as mono-party system. The second one is two-party system, bi-party system and the third one is multi-party system. We have discussed India is a democratic country and we are following multi-party system. In India we have national political parties and regional political parties. So, what is a national political party? A party that secures at least 6% total votes in Lok Sabha election or assembly election in 4 states and wins at least 4 seats in Lok Sabha is recognized as national political parties. We have 7 major national political parties that are Indian National Congress, Bharatiya Janata Party, Bahujan Samaj Party, Communist Party of Indian Marxist, Communist Party of India, Nationalist Congress Party and All India Trinamool Congress. Next one. What is a state party? A party that secures at least 6% of the total votes in the legislative assembly and wins at least 2 seats, known as or recognized as state party. We have so many regional political parties in different levels of different states. Other than the 7 political parties, most of other parties of our country are classified by the Election Commission as state parties. Some of the examples: parties like Samajwadi Party, Samada Party and Rashtriya Janata Dal have been national level political organization with units of several states. The next topic is, what are the challenges to political parties? The first one is, the first challenge of a political party is a lack of internal democracies within the parties. Lack of internal democracies within the parties. All over the world, there is a tendency in political parties toward the concentration of power in one or few leaders at the top. The top level leaders are controlling the party. The second challenge of the dynastic successions is related to the first one. Actually, it is related to the first one, lack of internal democracy. That is, since most political parties do not practice open and transparent procedure for their functioning, there are very few ways for an ordinary worker to rise at top in a party, because it was always controlled by the top leaders of the political party. No chance for the common people. Then the third challenge is about the growing role of money and muscle power in parties, especially during elections, spending lots of money. The fourth challenge is that very often parties do not seem to offer a meaningful choice to the voters. See, all the political parties, when they are getting power, they are following the same policies. They are not giving importance to the choice of voters, not implementing new laws, as they are following the same followed by the other party. Our next topic is, how can parties be reformed? So, we have discussed about the challenges to the political parties: money and muscle power, dynastic successions, lack of internal democracy, no choice for the voters. Now, how can we reform the political parties? The constitution was amended to prevent the elected MLAs and MPs from changing parties. Anti-defection policy. Okay, that is anti-defection. Our constitution started the anti-defection policy, not to change. Second one, the Supreme Court passed an order to reduce the influence of money and criminals. Money and criminals. Next one. Third one, the Election Commission passed an order making it is necessary for political parties to hold their organizational election and file their income tax returns. So, there should be a register. Fourth one, every candidate should produce affidavit before election. That is very important. What do you mean by an affidavit? An affidavit is a signed document of the personal information which is submitted to the election officer. Then another way to reform our political parties, a law should be made to regulate the internal affairs of political parties. It should be made compulsory for political parties to maintain a register of its members. There should be they should keep a register of its members. Then it should be made mandatory for political parties to give a minimum number of tickets, about 1/3 to women candidates. That is reservation for the candidates, women candidates. Third one, there should be state funding of elections. The government should give parties money to support their election expenses. It should be controlled by the government, central government. Our next chapter is about outcomes of democracy, chapter 7. In the earlier classes, we have discussed about different types of governments like monarchy, aristocracy, dictatorship, republican form of government, militarian form of government, democratic form of government. Now, India, we follows democracy. The term word democracy derived from the Greek word demos and kratos, which means people's power or people's representation through adult franchise. So, that is about democracy. Democracy is a way of rule. Democracy is a way of rule. And what are the outcomes of this democracy? We can expect outcomes of democracy, better outcomes of democracy. Participation, rule of law, transparency, responsibility, dignity of citizens, political consciousness, personal freedom, dignity of citizens, equality, liberty, fraternity. These are the outcomes we are expecting from our democracy. Now, the outcomes of democracy can be divided into political outcomes, social outcomes and economic outcomes. Let us begin with what is the political outcomes of democracy. So, outcomes of democracy can be termed as political outcomes, social outcome and economic outcomes. Now, what is political outcomes of democracy? First one, accountability. Accountability, that is responsible government. Second one is responsive, people's participation in our government, in decision making, etc. Third one is legitimate government. What do you mean by legitimate government? Legally chosen government. So, democratic government is a legally chosen government. Now, what are the economic outcomes of democracy? Economic outcomes, that is economic growth and development. What do you mean by economic growth? Economic growth depends upon the factors of production. What is factors of production? Land, labor, capital, organization or entrepreneurship. And what are the rewards for these factors of production? Rent, wages, capital and profit. So, through these factors of production and our economy divided into three sectors: agriculture sector, that is a primary sector; secondary sector, that is a industrial sector; and tertiary sector, that is a service sector. And income from all these sectors known as national income. Income from all these sectors commonly known as national income. On the basis of national income, per capita income. What is per capita income? National income divided by population. So, we are getting per capita income. On the basis of per capita income, a country is declared as developed economy, developing economy or underdeveloped economy. So, it is a duty of democracy, is a duty of democratic government to protect the economic growth or provide the economic growth. Then, reduce the poverty and inequality. That was also an outcome of democracy, democratic governments. Reduce the poverty and inequality. And what are the social outcomes of democracy? Accommodate the social diversity. As you all know, India is a unity. India, we follows unity in diversity. A vast country like India, we accommodate all the regional diversities, cultural diversities, language, everything. So, diversity in culture, lifestyle, religion, language, ethnicity, etc. Then, provide dignity and freedom to all citizens. That is another outcome, another social outcome of our democracy. Respect personal freedom, equality, liberty, fraternity. So, the outcomes of democracy can be termed as political outcome, social outcome and next one an economic outcome. Now, let us discuss about the new terms from this chapter. That is, first one is democracy, second one is dictator and the third one is legitimate government. Legitimate government means legally chosen government is known as legitimate government. And transparency, what do you mean by transparency? To examine the process of decision making of a democracy, that is known as transparency. And it is one of the merit of our democracy. Next one is accountable government, the government elected by the people and therefore responsible to them. through UAF, Universal Adult Franchise. Next one, responsive government, the government in which people have the right to know the process of decision making. Next one, economic development. What do you mean by economic development? It is the development of the wealth of the government. It is the development of the wealth of the government. Now, economic inequality. What do you mean by economic inequality? Differences in various measures of economic well-being among individuals in a group, population and countries. That is known as economic inequality. No discrimination. And the next one is social diversity. Diversity in culture, lifestyle, religion, language, ethnicity can be termed as social diversity. Next one, what do you mean by social division? Division between people, lower classes, upper classes. Actually, we following from the Vedic ages. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, same. That is known as social divisions. Division between people. In this session, we discuss about the important topics from 4 chapters, that is power sharing, federalism, political parties and outcomes of democracy. You can expect 1 mark, 3 mark and 5 mark question from these chapters. Actually application level questions and direct questions. Let us see some of the questions which you can expect for your final exam. The first one, Belgium. How the Belgium government accommodated the regional diversities, and Sri Lanka. Then, why power sharing is desirable? We discussed why power sharing is desirable because of 2 reasons. That is, one is prudential and the next one is moral reasons. For prudential, that is a better outcomes, and moral reasons, value based. Then, forms of power sharing. What are the different forms of power sharing? We discuss 4 types of power sharing, that is among the different levels of government, different organs of government, different social groups and different political parties and pressure groups and interest groups. Now, what is power sharing? What is power sharing? The division or distribution of power between the central government, state government or local governments can be termed as power sharing. It can also be termed as like power sharing between the different organs of the government like legislature, executive and judiciary. Check and balance system. When we discuss about the horizontal distribution of power, one organ of the government has the power to check the functions of the another organ, that was known as check and balance system. Then, what is federal division of power sharing? Federal division of power sharing, that is vertical division of power sharing or vertical distribution of power sharing among the different levels of government. Then, what is interest groups and pressure groups? Interest groups and pressure groups, it is a link between the government and the governed, and they sought the public opinion from various groups and have a pressure on the government. Next question, what is federalism? Unitary form of government. What is federalism? It is a system of government in which the power is shared between the central government and various constituent units of a country, that is state level governments. Then, what is unitary form of government? Under the unitary form of government, there is only one level of government, and that is central government, and all the subunits are subordinate to this central government. Central government can pass any orders to the state government, and state government is answerable to the central government. But in a federalism, the state government is not answerable to the central government, but a country like India, a democratic country like India, both the governments are responsible to the people or answerable to the people. Then we discuss about the features of federalism: 2 levels of government, jurisdictions, source of revenue, constitutionally guaranteed, judiciary, role of judiciary. Then categorization of federalism. What is the categorization of federalism? There are 2 types of federalism: coming together federalism and holding together federalism. Next one, 12th question is, what makes India a federal country? We discussed the 3-tier democracy. Our constitution recognizes about the importance of 3-tier democracy, that is central government, state government and the local self governments. That is the first point. Second point, threefold legislation, 3 lists, union list, state list and concurrent list. Then the third one is residuary powers, fourth one is the role of parliament and the fifth one is judiciary. So, these are the 5 points under which one what makes India a federal country, how federalism is success in India. Next one, how is federalism practiced? What are the problems faced by our Indian Federation? Linguistic states, language policy and center-state relations. If a question arose like that, how is federalism practiced? You have to write language policy, linguistic states and center-state relations. Now, what is decentralization? See, we have discussed about what is federalism, the division of power between the central government and state government. What is decentralization? When the power is taken away from the central government and state government and given to local self-government, it is known as decentralization. The idea behind the decentralization to settle the disputes or the conflicts at the district level itself. And decentralization and this local self-government is a best example for the democratic practices through the direct participation. And decentralization, 3 forms of government, central government commonly known as union government, state government and local self-government. Local self-government in the rural areas known as Panchayati Raj system, in the urban areas known as municipalities and municipal corporations and in the district level it is known as Jilla Parishad. Now, what is a political party? A political party is a group of people who come together to contest election and hold power in the government, and they put many policies and programs for the welfare of the country. Then, what are the main features of political parties? We discuss about the functions or features of political parties to contest elections, to run the government, opposition, role of opposition party, welfare schemes. No. Then 17th question, what is a national political party and state political party? Differentiate between the national political party and the state political parties. Next question is, what are the challenges to the political parties? What are the challenges to the political parties? Lack of internal democracy, the successions. No? Then how can parties be reformed? What are the measures through we can reform the parties? And what are the things how we can reform? Now, let us discuss about the 18th question. What are the challenges to the political parties? Then, how can parties be reformed? I hope this session may help you to face the final exam. Thank you.